Welcome to episode 167 of the Craft House Magic podcast. My name's Ellie and I'm coming to you from Norwich in Norfolk in the UK, and today is the 3rd of June. So welcome everybody. I hope you all had a lovely crafty week since the last time I've spoken to you, and I'm here to share all the things that I've been making in the last 7 days. So today I have some knitting, I have some crochet, some sewing, which is some dressmaking, a little bit of cross stitch, a gadget for this week, a couple of questions from the Ask Me Anything thread, and some information on my shop update. So you can find me on Instagram, Ravelry and Facebook as Craft House Magic, and I have my own website crafthousemagik.co.uk where I sell my handmade project bags, hand-dyed yarns, stitch markers, knitting needles, crochet hooks and bag making supplies. So we have a couple of Makalongs going on, so you can join in either on Instagram or Ravelry, and I'll leave information on those in the description bar below. So let's get on with the good stuff, shall we? So starting with the knitting, I shall show you my progress on my Cosy Memories blanket. I have actually finished the last 6 squares to make, well, what I planned to make, to finish all the square bits on my Cosy Memories blanket. I am going to do a I-cord bind off all the way around the outside, but I have finished the squares, which is good. And these are the ones that I've been working on this week. I don't know what most of them are. This one is a Henny Penny Makes mini that was out of a little 5-gram mini that I got in a set of 12. And I think this is a curated Yarn Co yarn because I got that out of a set that I finished making a shawl in the other week, and I had a little scrap left, so that went in too. So ta-da! And I shall show you the full length. So I shall try and hold it up to the camera. I will, once I've finished doing the I-cord bind off, I will lay it on the lounge floor and sort of scan over the whole thing so you can see it as one piece. But you can see that I've been doing sort of one dark, one light mostly over the whole blanket, and there's a section that the centre double decreases go that way. And then I do another section where the centre double decreases go this way, and then the last section they go that way, so they're sort of like a chevron. But it's more or less finished. I'm just going to get that I-cord bind off done. It's going to take me a little while to do because it is going to be quite a large distance all the way around, but quite a few people have asked me if I'd do a little mini tutorial on how I do the I-cord bind off, which I will do once I get started on it as a sort of part 4 of the Cosy Memories tutorial set. So there we go, that's my blanket, and I have managed to finish the first sock of the French meringue socks. So you can see this gorgeous cable texture across the top of the foot. This is just on the front part of the sock, and then the back of the foot is just plain. The same goes for the sole as well. I did actually just use my own standard heel flap and gusset because that's what I've got in my head. I have actually written the pattern out in my simple top down socks pattern for this heel if you want it. It's got just some plain like ribbing there. Those slip stitches give the sock a little bit more strength, so that if it's rubbing on the back of your shoe, then they last a little bit longer. But I absolutely love these cables, but so easy to memorise, which is also good. And the yarn I use for these socks is a West Green Loft yarns, and it is a 50-gram sock set with the 20-gram mini that I use. It's a classic sock set, which is 75% merino, superwash merino and 25% nylon, and the colourway is Margot and Tara. Absolutely love this. I picked it up from Fibre East a couple of years ago, and I finally got around to using it. I did actually plan to make these socks all along, it just took me a while to get started. So there we go, one sock done. I haven't actually started the second sock yet, but hopefully in the next couple of weeks that should be done, and that'll be another one ticked off my Make 9 list. I have actually dyed some yarn ready for another thing from my Make 9 list as well, which is a garment, so watch out for that in the next couple of weeks. So that's all the things that I've been working on in terms of knitting, but I do have some crochet to show you. So a little while ago I actually finished this cushion here, which looks like this, and this is using the Battenberg pattern by Sandra from the Cherry Heart podcast. And I basically just decided to use the squares to make a cushion cover rather than actually making the whole blanket like the pattern says. And what I basically did was make a big triangle shape of the squares, and then I folded them over so that they overlapped, and then I added some buttons either sort of side. And I didn't actually need to make any buttonholes because there's little holes in the little granny squares, so they could just pop through. And I used some really cute little shell buttons, which I thought looked lovely. So that one is finished, and I had some extra squares left over, so I thought I'd start a blanket out of these, and this is how I've got on so far. So I did actually make quite recently a few more of these squares. There's a couple I know what they are. This one is Stranded Dye Works in the Industrial Kingfisher colourway. I've got a Wool Barn yarn there. This one is a Nora George, and this one is a Hedgerow yarns, but some of them I can't remember where they were from because I've just used little scraps out of my stash. So that's how far I've got so far, but I'm hoping to sort of make a small blanket, not a huge blanket to go on a double bed or anything, so it won't take me too long. And I have enough squares already made up in the coloured squares to make a square that's sort of this big so far, so I'm going to make those up and then start on the coloured squares again, and they are so much fun to crochet on. So the pattern again is the Battenberg blanket by Sandra, and she does have some video tutorials and some step-by-step photo tutorials on her website, so it's very easy to follow. I used the same joining method as Sandra had on her video tutorial, and actually this time when I was doing the cushion I got a bit fed up of doing the plain ones, but for some reason this time I've only done 4, bearing in mind but these 4 plain ones, I've just really enjoyed doing them because it then brings together the coloured ones. So hopefully, you never know, I might have finished all the coloured ones joining together by next week. I say this all the time and then I quite often don't do it. Get distracted by something else. That's my crochet I've got to show you this week, but I do have some sewing to show you. So Barbara is going to come over and show you what she's got on. Thank you very much, Barbara. So Barbara is wearing my modification of the Agnes t-shirt by Tilly and the Buttons. So I've got this t-shirt here, which is a very, very, very worn manta ray t-shirt from Debenhams, which is really old and very scruffy looking. I thought I'd sort of take some ideas from the construction of this and put it into this t-shirt. So first of all, I changed the Agnes pattern in that I drafted a facing to go on the inside of the neckband, and I understitched the neckband so it didn't come, the inside lining didn't sort of fold outwards, but I then top stitched the outside of the facing because I wanted a sort of the effect of this sort of band but without having a separate piece, if that makes sense. And I added a false button placket here. I just did a shorter one this time because I think this one was a little bit longer, and I felt that it was maybe because there was quite a lot of buttons there, I'd make it a little bit shorter. But actually I probably could have done with it being a little bit longer there. And there's 3 buttons at the front. Let me lean Barbara over so you can see a little bit better. So there's a little button placket there. I basically just used mostly the Agnes top up here is pretty much as is, apart from changing the neckband and adding the button placket. And then I've added another sort of panel at the bottom, but the back is pretty much the same from here and upwards as the Agnes t-shirt from Tilly and the Buttons. So what I did is that I measured the bottom width of this t-shirt and then just cut out a rectangle for the back and the front and did some gathering just to fit it in so that it's quite a loose t-shirt. And I did use my cover stitch machine with the 3 needles. Not sure how well you can see that. You might be able to see it better if I lean Barbara's shoulder in. So I used a 3 needle stitch on my cover stitch machine, and you can see how that's finished off on the inside. And I did the same with the bottom hem down here. Now the top, when I was copying, well, I wasn't copying it, just getting some ideas, the gathering was actually isolated to the front there, but I decided that because quite a lot of my tops, like this is the Tilly and the Buttons Indigo top, there's some gathering just under the bust there. I thought, actually, I think it'll look alright if I gather it all the way around, but I wish I had actually isolated that to the front. I think it would have given a better shape at the sides. So it looks quite sort of bulky at the sides there. But I think what I might do is, if I unpick the side seams, and I can put some ties into the side seam so that I can pull it just under the bust back a little bit, so to give me a little bit more shape. But apart from that, I'm quite pleased with it actually. This is some gorgeous fabric that I got from Seasalt. And they used to do fabric on their website. They mainly sell clothes. They're a clothing company, but they do some fabrics. And I mentioned on the podcast last week that they seem to have stopped selling fabric on their website. But a lovely lady messaged me to say that she knew there was a shop that actually did sell it online. And I will leave a link to that shop in the description bar down below. I can't actually remember what the shop was called or what the lady's name was off the top of my head, but I will find that and put it in the show notes for you. So if you're after some Seasalt fabric, that you should be able to find some. This fabric is a cotton jersey. There isn't any elastin in there, and it's just got a lovely, nice, soft feeling and a nice drape to it. So I'm excited to wear that. So there we go. Barbara, give us a little bit of a twirl. What I shall do is, when I've finished recording the podcast, I'll pop it on and just give you a bit of a twirl here, because you only need to see the top half of me, so I don't need to do a twirl in the lounge. But thank you very much, Barbara. So there we go, that's my top on. Actually, I don't think it looks too bad with the gather there rather than being isolated to the front. So I'm pretty pleased with that. It's quite a nice baggy loose fit for the summer, and I love this fabric. So I now have a little bit of cross stitch to show you. In recent weeks, I haven't been sticking to my craft 20 a day with my cross stitch, but I have actually been doing 20 minutes for the last 4 days, I think, and I'm going to stick to that again. It's just been so busy, I couldn't fit in that 20 minutes, which sounds unbelievable, but just sometimes life just gets away with you, doesn't it? The pattern I'm doing is this Michael Powell pattern, and it is this gorgeous bookmark with the ice cream. Who could resist? And I bought it as a kit with everything in it that you need. The threads, the Ada, the little tassel, and a little bit of felt for the back to finish it off. And this is how I've got on. Actually, if I hold it up with the pattern, you'll be able to sort of see, so you can see what it looks like. So there is some back stitching that I need to do on top of this to give it a little bit more definition, but you can see the colours are sort of in the right place. I have done all that in the last 4 days, so I can whiz through it if I put my 20 minutes in. I've got to do the stem of the glass, and there's some red hearts that go up the side, a little bit here and down the bottom, and I'm nearly there. I don't know why it's took me so long. What's going on? So I am actually really enjoying that now. I think I felt like there was a lot of different sort of colours, and I don't really like stitching with 2 threads of different colours, because you can't do the loop method to start off, which is just silly, isn't it? Just get on with it, Ellie. So that's how far I've got with that. And I do have a gadget to share with you this week. So I said on last week's podcast that I've probably gone through all my gadgets over my 100 odd episodes, but I will go back and revisit some that I think are really essential gadgets that you might find useful too. So this week's gadget is the tailor's ham and sausage. So these are prim versions. You could make them yourself, but I just thought, I just can't be bothered. I didn't think that I'd really enjoy making it, and they're filled really tightly with sawdust, so I didn't think I'd enjoy having to pack it all in, so I thought I'm just going to buy some. So these are from Prim, and they've been working really well. So I only decided to buy them last year, and I had been just sort of managing to get on with dressmaking without these, and now I have them. Oh, it's so much easier, so much easier. Trying to press shoulder seams or any curved seam, the ham is absolutely brilliant. I would say if you only wanted to purchase one, I'd purchase the ham. This one is basically for doing sleeves. I must say, to be honest, I don't tend to make lots of things with long sleeves, so I haven't used this as much, but when winter comes I might make loads more stuff this year, who knows. So there we go, that's this week's gadget. I have my Ask Me Anything section next. I have a question from Karen, or a couple of questions really. So first of all, Karen was saying that she was making a t-shirt with 3 skeins of fingering weight hand-dyed yarn. They're all from the same dyer and they're all hand-dyed. So she wanted to know how I alternate skeins in order to get the colour to be as even as possible. Generally I tend to do 2 rows of one, 2 rows of another, 2 rows of the first one again, and carry on like that. But in some cases you can use a technique called helical knitting. And I know that Grace from Babel's Travelling Yarns has a brilliant tutorial on this, so I will leave a link in the description bar down below. There are some cases that you can't use this technique, but it's worth a look. Even if the garment you're currently working on you can't do it with, you will know how to do it for next time. So I do recommend that tutorial on doing helical knitting. So the next question from Karen, she was saying, what is the difference between a scarf, a wrap and a shawl? Now in my mind, a scarf is a long, thin item that you tend to put around your neck. A wrap is very similar to this, but it's a lot wider and a lot sort of bigger, so that you can wrap it right around yourself. That's what I'd say. And a shawl is something that you'd wear over your shoulders, like a shawl style. But of course I tend to wear shawls in a sort of scarf orientation as well. But I think the whole point is that you can wear it in the shawl orientation. So next question from Karen is, oh actually this links into when I was talking about my Cosy Memories blanket. I'm going to do an I-cord bind off on that, and I'm going to actually record myself doing the I-cord bind off so that you know exactly what I do to finish mine off. There are loads of tutorials out there already, but I'm going to show you how I do mine. There are several methods that you can use for picking up stitches. You can pick up stitches as you go, or go all the way around and pick up stitches and do the I-cord that way. I haven't quite decided what I'm going to do yet, but when I do I will record it and put up a mini tutorial. So Karen's question was about how to do the I-cord bind off on a blanket, so I'll be able to sort of show you exactly what I'm going to be doing in the next week or so, hopefully. So I have a question from Deborah, and she says, which interchangeable set would I recommend? Now, I started off with a Knit Pro set because they weren't quite as expensive as some of the other sets. I've had it probably about 7 years, but I have been more recently, I think the last 4 years, I've been using my higher interchangeable set. I decided to, because this is my Knit Pro one. I have added a few other needles there obviously because there's quite a lot in there, but this is how my Knit Pro set came. I had the Nova Silver. There are a couple of wooden ones in there that I've popped in, but I'm not a big fan of the Symphony wooden ones. They tend to split for me because I'm such a tight knitter. But I did find that some of my Knit Pro needles tarnished quite a bit over time. Now they had a lot of use. You can see this needle is really tarnished, and then it came with a bunch of cables. So if you feel that you might want to invest in a cheaper set, you could do something like that and then go for something more expensive. But if you want to sort of make an investment and you know that you're going to be knitting quite a bit, you could invest in one of the sort of more higher quality needles. So I picked Heikkinen as my favourite because I like them to be really sharp, but I do think that Chowgu needles are equally as good. They've just got slightly different properties. I really enjoy knitting with Chowgus as well, to be honest. They're a sort of, the sharpness is between the Heikkinen steel and the Heikkinen sharp needles, so actually they're pretty sharp for a general needle. So something like a Chowgu or a Heikkinen is sort of my top level of needle set. I obviously sell Heikkinen needles in my shop, so I have 2 sets. So I bought this one. It's a bit scuffed up now because I've used it quite a lot, but I had this before I had my online shop. And I've accumulated a few more sizes from the standard set, just because I thought, well, I need an extra this size or an extra one of this size, and I've just started to accumulate a wider range of needles, just because actually if I've got 2 or 3 projects on the go and they're all shawls, it's more likely to be with the same needle size if I'm knitting the same sort of thing, and therefore I've picked up duplicate sets of some of the sizes. Also, I tend to go for the 5-inch needle tips for sort of knitting shawls and things, but the 4-inch tips are really handy when you're using like a 16-inch cable for knitting hats. So I have a little set of the shorter ones at the bottom here as well. So I would say as a starter set for somebody who knits shawls and garments as well and things like that, I would go for the standard needle set. So this is a Heikkinen Premium Plus needle set, plus the addition of some other needles as well. So I do sell the sort of starter of this in my shop, but obviously with a nice new case and not the scruffy one that I've got. So if you're a sock knitter and you like to use a variety of needle sizes for socks, you might want to invest in a sock needle set as well. If you do tend to stick to the same size, then I would just say get some fixed needles that you don't need to obviously change the cables and the tips because you keep using the same size all the time. But if you do vary in the sizes, these run from a 2mm to a 3mm needle. So this is just a small set that I've got, the socks interchangeable set, and they come with the smaller needles go with the miniature cables, and then the 2.75 and 3mm you need to use an adapter that then goes onto the miniature cables, because the miniature cables actually are slightly finer than the standard cable that go with needle sizes 2.75 to 5mm, and this is the nice supple miniature cable. To be honest, the ones for the small needles as well at 2.75 to 5mm are nice and supple as well, but this is even more supple. Heikkinen do an interchangeable set for larger needles, so this set goes up to 5mm, and then they do a set that's 5.5 to, I can't remember, but the largest size range anyway, and that's the larger set. I haven't got any in stock on my shop at the moment, but I can actually get them in for you if you want to have those, and I hopefully will stock those in the next few months anyway, because I'm trying to just expand on the different Heikkinen products that I've got in my shop. So I would actually think, right, which size needles do I generally use? And I actually found that because I was using a lot of fingering weight yarn, that I was using the sort of 2.75 to a 5mm needle. I then bought the small interchangeable set because that had the range of needles that I wanted, with all the cables that I could ever need really, well, as long as you haven't got too many projects on the go. Again, if you're knitting socks, you'd get the interchangeable sock set. If you're using a lot of thicker yarn, say chunky, and I think Aran, depending on how you want your gauge to be, we might be knitting a shawl on an Aran weight yarn with a larger needle. Again, if you don't feel as if you're going to be knitting a lot of variety of projects, you might want to get just a few tips and a few cables, and then as long as you're only going to be doing 1 or 2 projects at once, you'd be fine. But obviously you're paying for the case as well to keep them in if you're buying a set. So I hope that helps, Deborah. If you have any more specific questions, just drop me a message and I'll try and answer you in a bit more detail. So the last section is just about my shop update. I just wanted to remind you that the June yarn clubs will only be available on my website until Sunday, June the 6th. So if you want one of the June yarn clubs, make sure you put an order in then, and they will be shipped on the 18th of June. So that's for the June yarn clubs. That's the sock sets and the mini sets as well. So that's the mixtape minis and the music from the movies sock sets. So that's it for today. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you'd like to see more, and I shall see you in the next podcast. Bye!